Home with Jim and Joy. And you know, you are an important part of our EWTN family, and we would love to hear from you. You can send us an email during this live show, jimandjoy@EWTN.com. Well, and we have another great guest today.
Absolutely incredible.
And his name is Dr. David Reardon, and he's the author of a great book called Making Abortion Rare, a healing strategy for a divided nation. And boy, is our nation divided over this issue, in the church and out of the church.
He's written several books. He's a real hero of ours. When he came into the room in the back, I wanted to applaud, and I did say bravo, because Dr. Reardon is just among the foremost experts in post-abortion healing work. The pain and suffering that women go through, men as well, regarding abortion, trying in every way to say, hey, this creates a whole nother set of problems. If you're thinking about it, please don't do it, and here's why. He has a great heart for the church and mobilizing the church to share on life. He has model legislation to try and make sure that women are very well informed about the risks regarding abortion. So if you're out there today and you've had an abortion, you're post-abortive, a man or woman, there's hope and there's healing for you this day. So stay with us throughout this show.
Well, this weekend we had the wonderful joy and pleasure of having our daughter Anna, who had to go to a teacher's conference, come to visit us. And she brought her 4 beautiful children, Gabby, Sienna, Sophia, and RJ. And one of the conversations, Anna's 7-year-old, Sienna's getting ready to make First Communion. And so Anna, you know, was doing some home catechesis with them and teaching them the Ten Commandments. And so she's, you know, so she was going back and forth. Sienna say 1, Sophia say 1, Sienna say 1, Sophia say 1. So she comes to Sophia.
So how old is Sophia?
She's gonna be 5, but going on 80. You know, she's one of those kind of kids, real old soul.
Sophia wisdom,
Yeah, Sophia Raquel. And so Sophia is thinking, and she's trying to figure it out, and she's thinking, and then she said, "Thou shalt not be dumb."
For one of the commandments.
For one of the commandments. So Anna goes, "Well, Sophia, that's not a commandment." And Sophia said, with all of herself, "Well, it should be, because people are dumb."
Yeah, you think of the 10 Commandments, you know, we should love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and all the positive things. Then it gets to thou shalt not commit murder or adultery, steal, covet. And so she says, thou shalt not be dumb. And while it's not in the scripture, I think it should be the 11th commandment.
It's a good one.
Because after the 10 commandments that God has given us from his very heart and soul, there should be something there that says, don't be dumb. I've just given you my revelation, my word here, to make you happy in life. Don't be dumb. Don't be ignorant about God's commandments. We need to teach our children the commandments of God, summarized in loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and our neighbors, ourselves. But don't let our children, don't let this nation be ignorant of the commandments of God. Don't be dumb. Or maybe we know the commandments of God and we're turning away from them. And, you know, don't be dumb. Don't be willfully ignorant, because you experience such pain when you denied the commandments of God.
And you know, it reminds me of the story when you were in jail, one of your many times.
Why was I in jail?
When you went to jail for
sitting in
abortion clinics, trying to help moms not to
non-violently, prayerfully,
non-violently. But one time you were in jail, and when you were in jail, you were asked to do a Bible study, and you were amazed. And this speaks of us at our society. You were amazed at the men who were 50 and over. They had some awareness of the 10 Commandments. The guys who were 30 and under, they were dumb. They were clueless. They didn't know the 10 Commandments. They don't know. And you were like, oh my gosh. And so you started to teach them the 10 Commandments.
The Lord gave me that, you know, I said, what can I teach, you know, while I'm here? And this was in the Fulton County Jail, which exists no longer. But it was like God to teach the 10 Commandments. And then after that, call them to repentance and ask them to renounce demonic power. And it was interesting because we had a group of people from another religion around us who were harassing those guys that were coming to that study. But every night we do the 10 Commandments, we renounce evil powers and come to the Lord. And the group grew and grew and grew until they threw me out of jail because there's so many people coming to it. So it was really, really powerful.
Well, you were having a great impact, but it's reminding us of the truth of God. And then Sophia had this other cute little revelation that she shared.
We don't got much time, but she was going to dip a hand in the holy water that we have by our door.
The font, yes.
The font. And so I said,
that I purchased at EWTNRC.com.
I didn't know what she knew about it. So I said,
one.
this isn't regular water. This is, so she put her hand in it, she made the sign of the cross, and she says, oh, does that stay with me? In other words, regular water evaporates, but does this stay with me? And we want you to know that the blessing of God does stay with you. The sacraments stay with you. No matter how old, how hurting, no matter what sin you've committed, the blessing of God stays with you, stays on you. You stay with him. David Reardon is up next. Dr. Reardon, don't go away. We'll be right back. It's a very important and blessed show. We'll be right back.
Stay with EWTN for complete coverage of World Youth Day with Pope Francis. The excitement builds as young people celebrate opening Mass in anticipation of the Pope's arrival. We're your front row seat for World Youth Day 2016 from Krakow on the Global Catholic Network, EWTN. Mercy is the theme for World Youth Day 2016, and Krakow, Poland is the place where hundreds of thousands of young believers will ignite the fire of their faith in unison with their shepherd, Pope Francis. EWTN is your network for complete live coverage of this incredible event. From the opening Mass to daily updates, interviews, and coverage with Chris Stefanik, Father Mark Mary Christina, and Jason Everett, right up until the closing ceremonies. On TV, radio, and on the go, EWTN is the only place to turn for complete live coverage of World Youth Day 2016 on the Global Catholic Network, EWTN.
Welcome back. Well, you're an important part of the family, and we would love to hear from you. If you have a question for today's guest, Dr. David Reardon, give us a call during the live broadcast. And if you're in North America, call us at 1-800-221-9460. Outside of North America, you can reach us at area code 205-271-2980, or you can always send us an email during the show, jimandjoy@ewtn.com, and hopefully we could use your question on the air. Well, you know, as Jim shared in our opening, Dr. David Reardon, we're just thrilled to have you here. We use your material at our Pregnancy Medical Center in Birmingham, Alabama, and so I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for your passion on this issue. You've been at it for a while, and our hearts are beating for the same cause. And I want to thank EWTN because nobody out there in media world is having this conversation that we're about to have. So I want to give a great clarion call to the truth of telling us about the effects of abortion on women. And so why don't you tell us how a woman, when she has an abortion, being an unwanted and rare, supposedly, the effects of that on her?
Well, it can vary from woman to woman. I mean, every case is unique, but there's similar themes that happen all the time. So I guess if you wanted to break it down into two broad groups, there's the group of women who are maternally attached. I mean, and if things were better, would be glad to be pregnant. If the guy was somebody they wanted to be with, if financially they had support, if their parents weren't upset, if things were right, they'd be glad to have the baby. Mm-hmm. And so for them, abortion is more likely to have a more negative effects more immediately, more quickly. They're going to have the sense of grief, loss, any sense of attachment that they have. So, for example, some women would say, as soon as they became pregnant, like, wow, I'm pregnant. I've always wanted to be pregnant, but all these practical reasons, I have to have an abortion. So, the mind and the heart are in conflict right off the bat. So there's that group of women. And then there's another group of women, I suppose, who you can say low maternal desire. They've always been career-oriented, never had any moral beliefs against abortion. And for them, when they find out they're pregnant, it's kind of like, wow, immediately abortion is the solution. And for them, usually it's after the abortion that they're suddenly, kaboom, wow, that was worse than I thought. But if they have strong coping mechanisms, they'll put it off. And so on average, we found that it takes about 8 years before women begin to deal with the past abortion. Mm-hmm. So some women will have immediate negative reactions. Others, it could be years later. Mm-hmm. And it could be difficulty getting pregnant, or when they do get pregnant, or the death of a loved one, or even simply when they retire and they're in their old age, mm-hmm. and suddenly they're wondering, what if my life had been different? So different things will bring it back. The basic issue, I suppose, is that we're all reflective people. At some point in our lives, we look back in our life and say, what if this or that? So you can't say any group of women are ever safe from not having problems, but some will put it off for a long time. For others, it will be really immediate, dramatic, or like I said, some experience later when they first see their firstborn live child, mm-hmm. and they see that baby and they realize, what did I lose before? Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of triggers that can bring up these buried emotions.
It's interesting when you're speaking about some women that might be more susceptible to desire having the child if they had support and so on, and then this other group of women. One of the questions that we bring up in our counseling, which is kind of fascinating for me, is this whole area of what about adoption? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting with the vast majority of women who are coming in who are abortion vulnerable, for whatever reason, when you bring up adoption, almost, I'd say a good majority of them, wherever they're from, would say, I could never do that.
Right. Which to me is one of those, it's actually a risk factor. It's signaling that in their hearts, they know, I'm already feeling attached, or I could become attached, or I'd be so attached I could never give the baby up for adoption.
Right.
But they somehow imagine the lie, but you have an abortion, it's going to turn back the clock and you'll never be attached. Right. Well, they have the abortion, and all those maternal instincts that were going to attach and not be able to give the baby are still going to attach to the loss in the memory of this child. And so they're still going to have the issues, but they don't realize it. That's the big lie.
I find that question about what about adoption, even if the woman's there and is seems so hard regarding the opposite way. I think that's an opportunity when I could never do that, to point out, you see, you're already bonding with the baby.
Right.
And that's a new awareness for them. And that really is, an opening of the door to help them get in touch with where they really are, even though they're denying it, or I've never taken a pro-life position, or I've got a career. Then why would you say you could never do that? What is it about you could never do? Who is this one that you're speaking about? Mm-hmm. So like you're saying, down deep within the deepest recesses, even if they're denying, there's a maternal instinct there, isn't there?
Right. Yeah. Well, like I said, the big lie in abortion is that somehow, if you have an abortion, it turns back the clock and you were never pregnant in the first place. Mm-hmm. But that's not the truth, of course. When you have an abortion, you have now experienced the loss of a pregnancy as opposed to actually having a baby. So once you're pregnant, it's not a choice between not being pregnant and, being pregnant. It's a choice between ending a pregnancy early and losing a baby, or carrying a baby to term that you now take care of. Right. So, in their minds, they're buying into the lie that if I have the abortion, it won't be like placing a child for adoption because it will never have been there. Right. But they discover later on that no, that attachment is still there. When God puts a child into you, you're already a mother. And it's just a question of whether you're going to lose that child to a miscarriage or abortion or adoption, or you're going to raise the child. But there's these paths where there's some relationship, and it could be a loss. And every woman who's suffered a miscarriage knows, that there's this loss, and society doesn't quite know what I'm going on with, but there, everybody, I often say, here's another little trigger, for example. This is the common question: do you have any children? For a woman who has had miscarriages or abortions, they know they have, but they usually don't say, here's how many abortions and miscarriages I've had. They say the living children, because they know that's what people are generally referring to. But in their heart, the question, do you have any children? Yes, I've got 3 children, plus the 2 I aborted, in parentheses, and the 1 I miscarried or whatever. So it's a relationship there, and you can't really avoid it just by pretending it doesn't exist.
When a woman believes the lie, because there's so many lies out there about abortion, when she believes the lie that I'm really just going to solve a problem, tell her family at home the lie about that in her mind, and then really the whole new set of problems that she creates, because because everyone's telling her, you don't want to hurt your family, you don't want to, you have your career, or you're in school, or he's not the right guy, this isn't the right time, whatever that list might appear to be, for all those reasons to go, I could just do this, and then I'm going to hit the reset button and I'm good to go. Right? How really does that affect her?
Well, again, it's going to depend a lot on the different individual, but for some women, like you described, if there's a big long list of people telling you all the reasons why abortion makes sense, that's a young woman who, part of her, as one woman wrote, she told everybody she wanted to have the baby, but everybody kept listing all the reasons why she should have the abortion, and pretty soon she felt like she was being crazy to want to keep it. And when I called her, she's socially aborted. She's been socially cut off from all the support people who are supposed to be going, yay, we're here to support you. She's hearing, are you crazy, are you crazy? And that drains her sense of confidence and makes her feel alone. And again, the classic example is, the husband or boyfriend who says, if you have this, you're on your own. You're being forced to choose between your love between one person and your love for your unborn child, and that's a terrible, unfair choice to put someone into. So, again, so you got that dynamic where, as one woman put it, she made a choice to be weak. She let other people make the decision for her because she didn't have the strength to stand up against all these pressures, all the nuances. For example, rape and incest abortions. Again, actually, best evidence shows that only half of the rape victims have abortions. And we have a book called Victims and Victors, where we've interviewed over 200 women who had rape or incest pregnancies that had either abortions or carried to terms. And most of the ones who had abortions are often doing so because they're being pressured by the people around them. Well, if you're even thinking about having this baby, then maybe you weren't really raped. So even defending the position, everybody's assuming, the doctors, well, you need to have abortion. So even though in their hearts they're struggling with this because they've just been victimized. In fact, I've found that a lot of these women who may have thought before, well, I'd have an abortion if I were ever raped. Once the rape is in the past and now they're faced with a pregnancy, now they're victims, and now they're even their mentality, the way they look at it is, so how can I do this to my baby? So it's not like women have rape or incest pregnancies automatically want abortions, and there's not any evidence they benefit from abortions.
You've actually researched this?
Oh yeah, we researched. We have a book
that.
right on. Yeah. So one of our books called Victims and Victors has the testimony. So all of the women who had carried to term say that was the best way to go. Virtually all of the women except one who had abortions said that it caused more trauma and made things worse rather than better. Okay, and even the one was fairly soon after it, so she is still trying to piece her life together. But the point is, that this idea that abortion again is going to be a magic wand that turns back the clock, and it doesn't help a woman recover from the trauma of rape. It doesn't
more
do
trauma.
It just adds another trauma. PTSD on top of PTSD. There's layers of trauma. So,
and we do want to say to people, if you're out there right now considering abortion, you're not alone. If you've had an abortion, we're here for you. People are here for you. You can go to 1-800-712-HELP. You can call that number, 1-800-712-HELP, or optionline.org. That's optionline.org. You are not alone. There's a whole family of people that want to assist you on either side of it, considering abortion or you're post-abortive. We're here for you. Dr. Reardon, as I'm listening to you speak now, you kind of said you've painted some scenarios where, like, the society is saying to this woman, you know, how could you not do this? It almost becomes a cultural pressure. And maybe you can speak to the various forms of pressure. You speak about unwanted abortions. We've heard of unwanted pregnancies. That's a phrase everybody seems to know, but you speak about unwanted abortions. What are you speaking about there, juxtaposed to the other one?
Well, there'd be a couple phrases. So one study of women at health clinics in the United States found that of those who had history of abortion, 64% felt pressured by other people in their lives to have an abortion. Another study found that, you know, again, probably about 70% feel pressured by circumstances, okay? So again, you know, for a woman whose first reaction, if your life was more ideal right now, would you want to have this baby? Many would be like, yeah, I mean, I could, you know, I would love to have a children. So others, it used to be abortion was, before it was made legal, abortion was an act of wealthy women after they'd already given birth to children, and there's kind of a late pregnancy. There was like, oh no, you know, I'm older, I'm not ready for another one. You know, so abortion was at the end of a woman's reproductive life cycle, where they were like, I don't want any more children, instead of at the beginning of reproductive life cycle. So now it's the early pregnancies that tend to be aborted. So it's really been turned upside down.
Incredible. You've worked with legislation in a number of areas. Have you worked with legislation in this area of coerced abortions and women's rights, or counseling centers, what they could do to help these women understand what's going on?
Yeah, well, we have a different approach than some pro-life groups have tried to pass laws to make it illegal to coerce a woman to have an abortion and to require the clinic to put up a sign saying, you know, but anyone who's good at coercing somebody, that sign's not going to stop, right? And often the coercion is very subtle. And for example, one girl said, you know, she told her mom that she wasn't going to have an abortion, and her mom changed her mind with 4 or 5 words. Where will you live?
Right.
And suddenly she's like, I had no choice. So, you know, then you have other cases where the coercion literally is a boyfriend threatening her with physical violence if she doesn't have the abortion, her harassing calls every night. So there can be a whole range of violent coercion and even attack. In fact, the number one cause of death among pregnant women is homicide.
Right.
Okay? So you know...
Say that again.
The number one cause of death among pregnant women is homicide, being killed by boyfriends or husbands, somebody who, because she's carrying the pregnancy to term, he doesn't want to be stuck with child support or whatever. So I mean, you know, again, it's so, and you know, a lot of these cases don't end up in homicide, but they end up in one security guard at an abortion clinic said that it wasn't the pro-lifer protesters who were the greatest threat to these women, it was the boyfriends, because he could tell when the boyfriend's dragging her in, making sure she's going to have the abortion. Right. So, you know, there's the subtle coercion, there's just the subtle pressure. Like, well, you can do this if you want, but, you know, we won't be able to help you a whole lot. Right. That's the kind of pressure, right? So anything along that continuum can lead women to have an unwanted abortion simply because they feel they have no choice. That's the big lie. You ask women about pro-choice, most of them say I didn't have a choice.
Right. It's good.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have more with Dr. David Reardon, Healing Strategy for a Divided Nation. You can go to his website, afterabortion.org, or stopforcedabortions.org. We'll be right back, so don't go away. Welcome back. Well, in case of I'm going to just go right to this email. It says this, that, you know, first of all, EWTN Religious Catalog has a new compilation of Mother Angelica's straightforward solutions to life puzzling problems. And it's put together in a book form with the help of Christine Allison. And it's called Mother Angelica's Answers, Not Promises. And you can order it by going to EWTNRC.com or by calling 1-800-854-6316. Now, Dr. David Reardon has a great book, and he's the author of Making Abortion Rare, a healing strategy for a divided nation. And if you sit down with your family or your coworkers and you understand just how divided our nation is on this issue in the church and out of the church, right? And so that would be a great book and a great read to arm that conversation.
Well, Dr. Reardon, you speak a lot about the repercussions of abortion on women, but the American Psychological Association says this, and I quote, "There is no credible evidence that a single elective abortion of an unwanted pregnancy in and of itself causes mental health problems for adult women." So it sounds to me like a layman, it's saying, hey, if women are having abortions, there's nothing that proves there's any repercussions or ramifications.
Right.
There's no credible evidence that a single elective abortion of an unwanted pregnancy in and of itself causes mental health problems for an adult woman. Yet you seem to be saying there are difficulties, there are problems. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding this quote.
Well, that quote was very
You
well...
want the quote?
No, sure. That quote was very well crafted if you read the entire report.
Okay.
It was crafted to give exactly the impression like you said.
Yeah.
But if you break down the actual quote, it says no credible evidence, meaning there is evidence, but we decide it's not credible, that a single abortion, meaning they admit that multiple abortions, there's evidence, cause problems.
Okay.
And over half of women having abortions clinics having abortions today have already had a prior abortion.
Right.
Of a single elective abortion, meaning they admit therapeutic abortions when there's any problems to the baby or health risk to the woman, more problems, psychological problems. Of an adult woman, they're admitting that for minors it's higher. There's a couple other qualifications in it. And one of the big things also is in and of itself. They're arguing that there's no proof that abortion is the sole cause of the woman's problems.
Right.
There's plenty of evidence that contributes to the cause. When you have a woman who commits suicide and she leaves a suicide note that it says about the abortion 2 weeks before, abortion contributed to that, but we can't prove that abortion was the sole cause of her breakdown. So, so it's a very nuanced statement saying, in effect, that for the minority of women having abortions who are adults, who haven't had a prior abortion, who have strong psychological health, there's no clear evidence that abortion in and of itself will cause problems. That's for the minority of women. So they're really admitting, you read the report, they even list 15 or more risk factors that predict which women are more likely to have problems, like feeling pressure to abort, having moral beliefs against abortion, being a teenager, having prior mental health. And if you look at the percentages of women having those things, 80 or 90% of women have multiple risk factors who are having abortions. So the APA is playing this little word game, trying to make it sound like, oh, don't worry about it, folks. Even though you read the full report, they admit some women have problems, and these women who fall into the majority of women are at risk.
Yeah, this is a very important point that you're sharing, and something that I've not delved into enough. I understand in speaking with women, helping them who've had abortions, to speak about possibility of post-abortion syndrome, and here's some of the outcomes and what they look like and so on. But you're mentioning risk factors up front, that some women could be even more susceptible to difficulties and problems if they do have an abortion. And that's something that we don't hear a lot about. Addressing women before it happens. Is the Psychiatric Association, do they understand that?
They're admitting
well, why don't we say this has to be addressed with women, even if it's their choice? So we're not saying end abortion, we're just saying we're accepting, not really, but we're accepting that this is the law of the land. We'll never, and if this is the law of the land, why aren't you addressing some women that might be even more susceptible to a bad outcome regarding this?
Everywhere else in medicine, they screen for risk factors. That's why when they list a drug on TV and they're telling you all the risk factors right there.
Yeah, and you're like, why do you want to take that drug?
And they say to talk to a doctor, because the doctor's job is to look through your risk profile. You may say, oh, I need this drug because it'll help me sleep better. And he says, but you're diabetic, it can kill you. He's supposed to know more than you do, even though you think this is supposed to help you. He knows more. Another elective surgery, LASIK surgery. Just because you want LASIK surgery doesn't mean you automatically deserve or should get it, because the doctor will screen for you, and they reject 20 to 25% of patients because they know after examining your eyeballs, you're not going to get the good results you want. Only in abortion do the doctors say, well, it's not up to us to know whether or not it's going to help you or not. But it should. Under the law, under Roe v. Wade, it said basic responsibility rests with the physician. The physician is expected to, ethical physician, to screen for these risk factors and make a risk-benefit assessment and say, I think abortion in your case is going to produce more benefits than harm, and so I would recommend it. That's what's supposed to take place. But basically, they wash their hands of it because they don't want to take the time to do proper screening. And unfortunately, this is what our law tries to address. Unfortunately, they face no liability right now. In the common law, you cannot sue for psychological injury unless there's also physical injury. So they're hiding behind that barrier in the common law. But there's no reason we can't pass a law to allow women to sue for psychological injury, because there's plenty of evidence to show that abortion is associated with psychological injury. One study done by Finland's national government found that the risk of suicide in the first year following an abortion was 6 times higher than the risk of suicide following a birth, and 3 times higher than compared to women who were not pregnant at all. So, you know, the link between abortion and suicide has been proven time and time again, but they don't screen for suicide risk at abortion clinics. So, you know, we do need to make doctors liable for giving good medical recommendations, for acting like doctors. A friend of mine said, you know, that before abortion was the only difference between, I'm blanking on it now, but that.
That's okay.
Yeah,
We don't have to
but anyway, so the doctors need to be expected to act like doctors, to do proper screening and counseling, and because they can't even give a good, how can a doctor give a good medical recommendation unless they ask about the risk factors? So they're trying to avoid
that whole conversation.
They're trying to avoid being doctors. They really perceive themselves as technicians. Whatever you want, we do, instead of whatever you want, we will help you evaluate whether or not this is good for you or not. That's what they should be doing.
So in one of your books, do you have a list of those that it might be more risky for them to do this? And the Psychiatric Association has also developed a list?
Yeah, I mean,
and so like, how do we hold them accountable to say, everybody knows what the list is, and we're not saying this is going to end abortion, it's saying you have abortion, why aren't you screening properly?
Right, so what you have to do is you have to put the list into statute. Because otherwise, the abortion, basically, a plaintiff would have to come in and find another abortion provider to testify against the first abortion provider, saying, oh, we screen for this all the time. But the standard of care has gotten so low because their whole goal is to make abortion cheap and cheap. So you need to put into, if you put into statute that if you fail to screen for these things, then it's negligence. Now you don't have to bring in the expert witness saying this because it's in statute. And again, any doctors, the research, everywhere else in medicine, the screening takes place. So even the most liberal judge is going to have a hard time throwing out a statute that says doctors who fail to screen for these well-known risk factors that even the APA recognizes can't be held liable. So, you know, even Ginsburg, I don't understand how Ginsburg, because if she tries to create
Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Even if they try to craft a constitutional right to waive your right to be screened for risk factors about something you don't know, it's kind of like, how, they would destroy all of medicine if they came out with a ruling that basically says doctors can't be held liable for bad medicine.
You sound like you have a degree of confidence that this can definitely be put into statute and passed, yet we've seen what just happened recently with the Texas law, which is bringing up to standards abortion mills to meet the same standards as other clinics that are doing surgery and so on, and that got struck down. Why do you think that there may be better hope?
Well, for this one in particular, looking at the justices that we have, Justice Kennedy, in a prior ruling, has already expressed concern about the psychological health of abortion on women. Okay, since this has to do with the psychological health of abortion, and again, it's based on clear risk factors, and the science is stronger in our place right now. With the clinic regulations that they were passing in Texas, it was less clear. For example, having the emergency equipment online. See, the abortionists control the data about reporting what takes place in their clinics in the first 24 hours after an abortion. Since they control the data, they're hiding the number of complications, and they went to the Supreme Court and says, oh, there's hardly any complications, therefore it's unfair to make us have to have wide hallways for gurneys or whatever. So I mean, so they're controlling, so we have more control over, and we certainly have more data, and certainly I think we have the empathy of Kennedy, but even more fundamentally, it's not an undue burden to ever screen for risk factors. Everywhere else in medicine, you fill out a form, the doctor asks you about things. It is a proper burden to good medicine to get proper screening and good counsel. So it fits well within what the Supreme Court said. Now, who knows? That, I guess at the end of the day, I want to see what the other side can try to argue, because I've looked at this for 20 years. I've talked to a bunch of attorneys, a bunch of doctors. None of us have ever come up with how they're going to argue against.
Looking at risk factors.
So have you developed model legislation for this, and what has happened with that thus far?
Right. So that model legislation is at stopforcedabortions.com, and it's called the Protection from Unsafe Abortions Act. It would require screening. It would require the doctor to also list his evaluation of these things. And it basically, the key is that it gives women the right to sue, not only for psychological injury, but if he fails to do the proper screening, she can sue for the wrongful death of her child. Because if basically we're trying to basically make it easy for women to hold the abortion clinics accountable. Because right now, only one woman in the whole United States has ever won a lawsuit against an abortion clinic because of psychological injury. And again, that's because the law disfavors that. So you need to put into statute that in the case of abortion, you are allowed to sue for psychological injury. And that, Planned Parenthood has already said that if it went into law, they'd stop doing abortions because they don't want to face the liability.
Right. Well, we have a phone call. We have Janet from Arizona on the phone. Janet, welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy. Your question or your comment for Dr. David Reardon?
Yes. This happened 44 years ago. Prior to that, I had twins, and they're fraternal twins, and they're alive and doing very well. 10 months later, I had an ectopic pregnancy, but it was not understood when the doctor examined me and told me that I was pregnant again. Within a short period of time, I had intense pain throughout my whole body. I could not even feel my nails or any part of my body without screaming in pain. The next day, I had no pain. And I called the doctor, and he said, "You have an ectopic pregnancy." He said, "I will make arrangements for it to be aborted." And that's what happened. And I wanted to know how the Catholic Church understood this.
Okay. Janet, thank you.
I thank you very much.
Thank you so much for trusting us and sharing this tender story with us. God bless you. Doctor, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, under Catholic doctrine, that wasn't an abortion. They would remove the tube that was where the ectopic pregnancy, so they're removing the diseased organ, not with the intent of killing the baby, but with the intent of saving your life. If today we had the technology to transfer that baby into a artificial womb so to survive, you would try to do that. So you did not have an abortion in the sense of what the church is talking about, where it's a choice to end a life.
Right.
You had a ectopic pregnancy, and it's treated totally differently under the double effect in Catholic theology.
And in reality, the ectopic pregnancy, the baby cannot even survive in the fallopian tube because it needs to be into the uterine cavity.
It may have been dead already.
Right.
If given what you describe as the experience, it could have ruptured the tube. But
you mentioned the principle of double effect. So they were going to relieve this situation to help this woman, and in the process there was another effect with the baby's demise. But there's something here though about ectopic pregnancy and trying to repair the damaged tube, which is it's going to have to happen anyway. versus going directly in, because you can go in and dissolve that little one. So this is a very difficult thing when you're going through this. But if we were going through this, I would say I would rather the surgical procedure. Once you go in and say, we're going to directly go after this little embryo and dissolve this embryo or whatever, then you go into a different area. So there's different ways of dealing with an ectopic pregnancy, and it needs to be that surgical one and repair of that tube. Okay.
Well, Dr. Reardon, we have Mary on the phone. And Mary, welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy. Your question or your comment for Dr. David Reardon.
Thank you. I would like to know if there has been any discussion or wonderment about how an abortion affects a boy or a young man after the abortion or in the decision of having an abortion.
Good question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah,
Thank you. May I hang up here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, men can have psychological reactions and long-term problems associated with abortion. Sometimes, for again, men, different situations, sometimes the man feels guilty because he pressured towards the abortion or he wasn't supportive. Other times he didn't want her to have the abortion and he felt totally out of control. He begged her not to have the abortion and she did it anyway. So there can be all different kinds of reactions, but men definitely can have problems. And again, there's post-abortion healing programs for men. There's also great programs for couples. Often it's very good for a couple to go through post-abortion healing program together so that they understand each other's loss. So whether the man wasn't involved in the abortion or if he was, or if the woman wasn't involved but her husband was involved in the abortion, it can be a really strengthening thing for a relationship to work through the grief process with your partner. But to briefly answer the question, yes. There is research that it can impact men and often impacts men and couples.
What are some of the programs you're thinking of when you say there's some great resources for people? What would you recommend?
Well, if you went to our website, afterabortion.org, we've got links to programs, some for men. And I know Rachel's Vineyard does weekend retreats that they often have couples and do it. So that's what I was thinking about, couples.
Closing word, Dr. Reardon, to all of our family out there to encourage them.
Well, again, do not ever give up hope that God's grace will move and bring healing into your life and to a loved one's life who may have been involved in a past abortion. We need to wear our compassion on our sleeve, make clear that the pro-abortion side wants to make it look like pro-life Christians are hateful people, that we're judging people out there. No, we understand many of us, in fact, many post-abortive women and men are now in leadership positions in pregnancy centers and pro-life movement because they're there to try to use their experience to help others. So never give up hope. God wants you to find healing. God is reaching out with a desire to heal you and draw you in and help you to move on. It's not about forgetting the pain. It's not about, in fact, one of the greatest temptations is the devil makes women feel like they have to hang on to their guilt because you owe it to that baby to feel guilty. And we need to, again, all those who've been through post-abortion healing will help you go through the path of realizing I don't have to hang on to the guilt. I can hang on to God's forgiveness and look forward to being reunited with my child and know that growth and healing is the proper way to show respect to both my child and to what God is offering to me.
Dr. Reardon, thank you for your decades of work and compassion. Thank you for loving them both, the baby in the womb, the mother, and for leading us to develop a new culture of life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.